Imagine your life changing completely in a single day after meeting a very wealthy MILF. This story took place on a rainy Tuesday. I was waiting at the bus stop with 5 cents in my pocket because I had a waiter job interview at a restaurant. Back then I was broke and had some debts, but it never crossed my mind that my life would change completely just one day later. Because the weather was rainy, my clothes had gotten very wet and were a bit dirty. Then I arrived at the restaurant out of breath, running late, and since my clothes were in such bad shape, the first thought that came to my mind was to go straight to the restroom to fix myself up. When I entered the building, it was a stunning restaurant. Large, everywhere smooth marble, crystal chandeliers filled with people who smelled of wealth. Excitement, stress, and hunger had all merged into one. Then without thinking, I looked for the restroom sign and walked straight in. Because I was in such a rush, I went in without knowing which door was for women and which was for men. But once I was inside, I realized I had entered the wrong one because there was the scent of women's perfume. But by then it was too late. The door to one of the stalls swung open. Out stepped the most captivating woman I had ever seen in my life. She was in her mid-40s with a confidence that could bring the entire world to its knees. A mature and noble woman. Leyla. Our eyes met. I stumbled back in panic, my back hitting the wall. I could feel my cheeks burning red. I'm so sorry. I was in a rush. Wrong door. I'm leaving right now, I said. Leyla stopped. She looked me up and down. She saw the innocent fear in my eyes, my unaffected naturalness. In this wealthy and fake world, this kind of authenticity was something she was not used to seeing. A faint, enchanting smile appeared at the corner of her lips. "Calm down, young man," she said. Her voice was like velvet. "This is not a crime scene, just a wrong door." "I truly meant no harm," I said, unable to lift my eyes from the floor. Leyla took a step toward me. That expensive perfume filled my lungs entirely. "What's your name?" she said. "Carré," I whispered. "Very well, Carré," said Leyla, looking into my eyes. "In all my years, you are the sweetest criminal I have ever encountered at a restroom door. But you cannot repay this grave mistake of yours with just an apology. Tonight at 8 o'clock, you will come to my table at the luxury restaurant by the waterfront. You will have a drink with me. Otherwise, I will call the police. Do we have a deal?" she said. I knew she was joking, but I was spellbound by that deep, inviting look in her eyes. I nodded my head in agreement. At that moment, I had no idea that the first domino piece that would change the course of my life had just fallen. When 8 o'clock came, I gave my last money to the minibus and went to that incredibly luxurious venue by the waterfront. Leyla was sitting at the most beautiful table, lit by candlelight with a sea view. When she saw me, she smiled and gestured to the chair across from her. When I sat down at the table, my hands were trembling. For the first time in my life, I was in such an environment. Waiters constantly circled around us, serving the finest drinks and special dishes. Leyla asked me questions, drawing me into conversation. She was so sincere and warm that before long, the heavy tension on me dissolved. I began to tell her everything inside me. My poverty, my loneliness, my desperate passion for music. Leyla listened to me with great admiration and tenderness. I didn't notice how time passed. For the first time in my life, I was drinking quality alcohol, and in my excitement, I had knocked back glass after glass. After a while, my head began to spin, and the lights in the venue started to blur together. Leyla's face became hazy. The last thing I remembered was Leyla taking my hand and saying, "You are safe now, Carré." Then my mind plunged completely into darkness. When I opened my eyes the next morning, drums were pounding inside my brain. But the bed, I had never felt such softness in my life. The sheets were like silk. The ceiling was so high that a massive crystal chandelier swayed above me. When I looked out through the enormous glass window in the room, all of New York lay at my feet. This place was a palace. Suddenly, the thought of my waiter interview came to mind. I jumped out of bed and pulled out my phone. It was noon, 12 o'clock. "Oh no," I cried in panic. "I'm late for work. I'm done. I'll be fired. How will I pay the rent?" At that moment, the heavy wooden door of the room slowly opened. Leyla entered, carrying a silver tray. She was wearing a silk robe and looked magnificent. When she saw my panicked state, she burst into a cheerful laugh. She set the tray on the nightstand and walked toward me. "Calm down, Carré," she said. "You're not late for anything. None of those small jobs, none of those wretched worries matter anymore." "What do you mean?" I said in bewilderment. "I need to work." Leyla took my hands. In her eyes was a warmth, a sense of ownership that I had never seen in anyone before. "Carré," she whispered, "last night, without realizing it, you hooked a golden fish on your line. Your whole life has changed. Now your boss, and your future, is me." Leyla was not just wealthy. She was the chairwoman of one of the country's largest conglomerates, one of the most powerful women who had the media and art world wrapped around her finger. And to be honest, she had genuinely fallen in love with my pure, unspoiled manner, the innocence in my eyes. "Now tell me," said Leyla, sitting me down on the bed, "what do you truly want to do? What is that hidden dream in your heart?" I took a deep breath. I want to sing, Leyla," I said. "I want to perform the songs I write myself. I want to let thousands of people hear my voice. That is my only dream." Leyla smiled and said, "Then today is your new birthday." Leyla picked up the phone on the nightstand and dialed a single number. "John," she said to the person on the line, "shut down the best studio in the country. We'll be there in an hour, and tell Jack to come to the studio right away." Jack? Jack was the biggest pop icon of the last decade in this country, a man who filled stadiums, and he was my childhood hero. I was struck speechless with astonishment. Just 1 hour later, I found myself in a massive production center in Maslak. As we entered, my childhood idol Jack was standing behind enormous soundproofed glass. When he saw Leyla, he immediately stood up and embraced her respectfully. Leyla pointed to me. "Jack, this is Corey, the most precious person in my life. I want you to listen to him." I couldn't believe my eyes. Jack smiled at me. "Step up to the microphone, young man. Let's see your talent," he said. I put on the headphones. I slowly walked up to the microphone. Outside the glass, Leyla and the major producers were watching me. My hands were trembling. They pressed the first key on the piano. I gathered my breath, closed my eyes, and began to sing the song I had sung for years in my small room, against the walls. I poured into my voice all the heartbreak, the poverty, the dreams inside me. When the song ended, I opened my eyes. Everyone behind the glass had frozen in place. Jack's headphones had fallen from his hand. A single tear was rolling down Leyla's cheek. Jack immediately flung open the studio door and burst in. "What kind of voice do you have, man?" he shouted. "This is not a voice, this is a divine gift. Leyla, this kid will be the biggest star in this country within a few months." In that moment, I felt the old, desperate Corey inside me die. The artist Corey was being born. When we left the studio, it was evening. In a single day, my album deal had been signed, and the country's most famous composers had begun working for me. My life was sliding before my eyes like a film reel. When we got into the luxury car, Leyla held my hand tightly. "You are extraordinary, Corey," she said. "I am proud of you. But a star's walk, and the car he drives, must also be different." She turned to the driver. "Head to Bosphorus." "Leyla, where are we going?" I asked in surprise. "We're getting you the first gift of your new life," she said with a smile. "A brand new black sports car. It's waiting for you in the showroom." My eyes filled with tears. A restroom I had entered by mistake had lifted me from the lowest point in life and hurled me to the very top. Leyla had given me not only her money, but her heart and my dreams. There was no going back now. A new world was beginning for Corey. It was the 3rd week since I had gotten my new car. Leyla had rented me a magnificent penthouse apartment with a Bosphorus view and had filled my wardrobe with the most stylish pieces from world-famous brands. I was now wearing a hat when I walked in the street so people wouldn't recognize me, because the first audio recordings leaked from the studio had begun going viral on social media. But one night, while I was sitting by the poolside at Leyla's mansion during a party, my old phone in my pocket rang. I had set this phone aside after Leyla got me a new number, but it still had charge. The calling number was hidden. I answered. "Hello?" I said. From the other end, a deep, muffled, and mechanical voice spoke. "Corey, don't get too comfortable with this sweet dream Leyla has laid out for you. You think you caught the golden fish, but you are the bait on that hook. Do you know where Leyla's previous star candidate young man is? 18 months ago, his body was pulled from the waters of the Bosphorus. You're next, Corey." The phone went dead. I froze. The laughter around me, the popping champagne, the lights, everything suddenly became meaningless. I looked across the pool at Leyla, who was raising her glass toward me with that elegant smile on her face. That warm smile in her eyes suddenly transformed in my mind into an icy unease. Had I truly caught a golden fish, or had I fallen into the web of a magnificent spider? After that night, a great gnawing worm burrowed inside me. Leyla was still incredibly loving toward me. She had set an unlimited budget for the first music video of my album and had made a deal with a world-famous director. But I could no longer sleep at nights. One afternoon, while Leyla was at the board of directors meeting at the holding company, I entered the study room in the mansion. It was filled with antique furniture and enormous bookshelves. I had once seen one of the servants open a hidden compartment behind the desk while cleaning. I quietly pried open the safe. Inside were old newspaper clippings in black folders. I opened one of the folders. On the folder, it read, James, 2024. I looked at the photographs. They were photos of a young man in his early 20s who looked remarkably like me, with sharp facial features. As I leafed through the folder, my blood ran cold. James had met Leyla in a restaurant just like me. Leyla had gotten him into a studio and bought him luxury cars. And the final newspaper clipping at the last page of the folder sat plainly, Mysterious Death of Young Singer Arda. His car plunged into the Bosphorus. At that moment, the sound of the lock on the door was heard. I quickly shut the folder and threw it into the safe, but it was too late. Leyla was standing in the doorway. That ever-present sweet smile on her face was gone. She was looking at me with an ice-cold expression. There are places you should not search, Corey, she said in a low voice. I swallowed. My heart was pounding as if it would break through my ribcage. Who was James, Leyla? I asked. My voice was trembling. Am I a spare part for you just like him? Am I a toy you turn into a singer and then make disappear? Leyla walked into the room. She approached the desk with slow steps. She wasn't crying, but a deep pain appeared in her eyes. She poured a whiskey from the bottle on the desk into a glass and drank it in one go. James was my son, Carey, she said. I stood rooted to the spot. What? James was my own son, Leyla repeated, her voice this time becoming fragile. He was my only child, the one I had kept secret, hidden from his father, burning with a passion for music. I tried to keep him away from this industry, but he wouldn't listen. He couldn't take that curve in his own car and left me alone in this world. She walked toward me, took my face in her hands. Her hands were firm. The moment I saw you at that restroom door, when I saw that innocence in your eyes, that passion in your voice, I saw James. I did not make you a toy, Carey. I made a promise to carry on James's unfinished dream through you, to take you to the top while protecting you from this cruel world. I placed you in the position of the child I had lost. Tears were streaming down her face. In that moment, I understood that the hidden number that had called me was a trap set up by Leyla's enemies to frighten me. I will never allow them to harm you, said Leyla. You are my rebirth. 3 months later, the enormous indoor stadium in New York was packed to the brim. 15,000 people in the darkness, with lights in their hands, were chanting my name, Carey, Carey, Carey. Backstage, I was waiting in a specially designed black jacket. Leyla was standing beside me. She was wearing a wonderful dress, looking at me with pride. Are you ready, Star? She whispered in my ear. Thanks to you, we are ready, I said, and kissed her hand. The lights went out. As a massive roar erupted, I took my first step toward the stage. A wrong door, a step taken at the wrong moment, had given me life's greatest miracle. I was Carey, the forgotten child of the streets, now the man whose voice the whole city listened to. And this story was only just beginning.